Okay, so I'd like to call up our next panel, which is our Future of Monetization panel. It's going to be moderated by Russ Binns from AST. And on the panel is Brad Close. And I point them out specifically because these are two guys I went to law school with, you know, and it's great to be able to have folks that I went to law school with on the panel. And Russ is filling in for Louis Carbonneau, who many of you know. And Louis, unfortunately, had some issues that prevented him from being here with us today, and he sent his regrets and said to say hello to everyone. So from Louis, hello to everyone. But I'll leave it to you guys to take over. Russ?
Sure. Thanks, Gene. It is actually very nice to see people again. It's been too long. So this is the Future of Monetization panel. Let me do some short introductions so we can get right into it. As Gene mentioned, Louis couldn't make it, so I'm filling in as moderator. I'm Russ Binns, by the way. I'm the CEO and General Counsel of Allied Security Trust, which is a cooperative of high-tech companies that buys patents off the open market for defensive purposes. And our members are 40 of the largest high-tech companies in the world that are probably the biggest participants in the secondary market for patents. Before that, I was the chief IP counsel at Avaya, and before that, I was a patent litigator for 10 years. And we've got a great panel here for you. I'll start with Stephen Key, who is an entrepreneur, a contributor to Forbes, an inventor, and a leading expert in licensing consumer products. His inventions and products have sold more than 500 million units and generated billions of dollars in revenue. So we welcome his perspective to this panel. Eric Robinson is a partner at Porter Hedges. He's an experienced patent litigator with broad experience in monetization and licensing. He also authors a China patent blog and a Waco patent blog, and has published many articles about US and Chinese patent litigation. And then Brad Close is an executive vice president of licensing at Trans-Pacific IP. He's an experienced patent attorney with over 20 years experience and has been a patent broker for the past 12 years?
About 15 now.
15 years now. Working with clients on portfolio management, IP strategy, and monetization. And like Gene said, he, like myself, is a graduate of Franklin Pierce Law Center. So as you can see, we've got a diverse perspective of opinions here on the panel with a litigator, an inventor, a broker, and myself running a cooperative that buys patents. So let's get right into it. We had a couple slides to present, which Gene told me will get circulated to people. But I'll describe one for you that'll kick the meeting off. The patent market is actually, for those that aren't familiar with it, is quite robust. There is, if you add up the asking prices of all the patents that are for sale, it's currently about $35 billion, or $38 billion, sorry, of patents for sale. And about 10 billion of it gets sold. So you have about another $28 billion of patents that are not getting sold but are being marketed for sale. With the ones that are being sold, we're seeing about 100 transactions, a bit over 100 transactions a month, every month for the last few years. So it is a very robust marketplace for the buying and selling of patents, and that's not including all the licensing activity that's going on as well for monetization. These also lead to, especially the unsold patents, but also the sold patents, leads to some litigation risk, which I think we'll talk about as well. So with that, let me start by asking some questions. Let me start with you, Brad. Are you finding it easier or harder to make a patent deal today than it was a year or two ago?
Can I go back a little further
Sure.
than a year or two ago? Because it's sometimes like you never know what the data is going to be until you look back at least a year. So there's clearly, there were times when patents could be sold on the open market fairly easily and simply, and I think we we blew past that a number of years ago. The market does have a few ups and downs when AST decides to launch their IP3 program or other things like that. You certainly do see a little bit of an uptick. But my experience in general has always been a downward pressure on just selling patents into the open market. It tends to, on average, get a little bit worse almost every year as far as that goes. And there's things that we do to mediate it and pivot and work to the marketplace. But if it's just a simple question of how's the open market doing, it's a little bit worse than it was a year or two ago.
So when you say harder, does you mean it's just taking longer to get a deal done? Fewer deals are getting done?
Yeah. A lot fewer companies actually looking for patents, and it all harkens back to enforcement. When enforcement's harder, companies just place a lot less emphasis on buying patents when they know that they can get away with open infringement and don't necessarily have to license. That actually goes back to the market fairly quickly.
So Stephen, I know you've got a lot of experience with licensing consumer products and doing deals. When there's so many patents not for sale or not selling, let me ask you this. Do you think it's worth it getting a patent?
Well, absolutely I do. I believe what I'm seeing with my audience and some of the inventors that I work closely with, they're licensing a lot of technology and a lot of patents and all different types of technologies, but there's really no patents. So I'm here to really discuss what's happening. I'm seeing a lot of deals get licensed, but there's really no patents being issued. There is perceived ownership. Inventors are filing provisional patent applications. Maybe they're bundling that with trademarks and copyrights. There's a whole package they're putting together. And companies are licensing more products, consumer products, than I've ever seen before. I know the environment doesn't look very positive, but from my perspective, and we have students in over 65 different countries, the system is working, and it's working extremely well. I think those companies realize that it's probably not in their best interest to litigate. It's very hard to stop people from copying your ideas, your products, but they're still licensing those ideas from inventors because they know it's really first to market. They know in order to stay competitive, they must innovate. So from my perspective, we're seeing a lot of products get licensed. So it's a great time to be an inventor.
And Brad, I think you have maybe a little bit different view on whether or not it's worth it getting a patent, at least not for everybody. What's your view?
Yeah, certainly not for everybody. I'm sure that many of you have had this exact same experience. Someone finds out you're a patent attorney if you're at the barber or grocery store or wherever, and they want to know if they should get a patent. And by and large, in those types of cases, I say, no, what are you going to do with it? You get a patent, and what's there to do? So if you are getting patent for the very traditional reasons of excluding competitors in a marketplace, or even other important things like getting funding, or even just putting out press releases or doing cross-licensing negotiations, all those are very valid reasons for getting a patent. But the current patent system does not work well for the small people that don't know what to do with it, and just my advice is no, don't get a patent in that case.
Eric, what's your views on that?
I disagree. I think that there are many reasons to have a patent. Way back, longer than I want to think about, at the beginning of my career, I did some patent prosecution, I did deal work, and then I became a litigator. And now that's basically what I focus on. So, disclaimer, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That said, for those that really want to protect their space in the industry, that have an invention that they want to protect, it's really the only way to do it, or at least it's a way to do it that, if you do it right, can be very successful. The problem is that over the past 20 years, and especially over the past 10 years, it's gotten more difficult to enforce patents. the 700-pound elephant or gorilla or whatever animal you want to talk about in the room is that when the American Invents Act was instituted, there were a lot of negative things, but the big one is the PTAB. And now in most courts across the country, what happens is they stay your case while the PTAB and the accused infringer throw darts at your patent for 18 to 24 months. And that's one of the reasons why Judge Albright's court, the Eastern District of Texas, and a few others are great to be in. Even if Judge Albright was a horrible judge, and he's not, obviously not, but even if he were, I would still file in his court for the simple reason that you get your day in court. And that's a big problem. So, the things that has changed is you probably need more patents, you need better patents. These are not necessarily bad things. But, because in the mid-2000s, I think we swung, a little bit too far in one direction, and you could have one patent on something that has little to do with, what you sue on. Now, you really have to have quality patents, and you have to have a portfolio. But if you do that, it can achieve the goals of protecting your space.
So let's go to you, Stephen. What do you do when people just aren't interested in your patent?
Well, first of all, I want to continue this conversation just a little bit. I do believe that even though companies understand that chasing the copycats is very difficult, they still want you to have that perceived ownership. So, and it does have value. Now, maybe not from a litigation situation, but to raise money, to give them confidence that you know what you're doing. It has a lot of value here. So don't get me wrong. I do believe you should file it, but put together the right team, include that patent that has workarounds and variations and manufacturing. Write it in such a way that truly has value from a business perspective. And I don't see a lot of that being done. But if you, as an inventor, if you can bundle it that way, it does have value, but not so much from a litigation standpoint. So I wanted to make that real clear. And your question?
Yeah, what do you do when people aren't interested in your patent?
Well, you go to the next company. I do think that what I'm seeing out there from my audience, inventors, it's really finding the right company with the right attitude that believes to stay competitive, they have to come up with new ideas. And that really has nothing to do with protection. That has to do with generating good products, good ideas that people want. So if you find that right company that has the right culture, that really appreciates that creativity, appreciates something new, they look beyond the intellectual property standpoint. They look at who's the team, is it the right timing, is it going to make a difference in the marketplace? So you just go to that next company that needs you. So it's really a game of finding that right home and the right company that can take it forward.
Yeah, I think all three of you kind of keyed on to different aspects of quality of patents, actually, because with higher quality patents, if they're drafted properly, maybe if you're not just filing for numbers and not treating it like a commodity, but treating it more like the art that it is, that then you have an easier time licensing those patents, you have an easier time enforcing those patents, it gives you better reasons to have a patent in general. We have seen, and you'll see another chart or two charts, that litigation is on the rise again. It was declining for several years, but the last 2 years, number of patent litigations is increasing. And not only is it increasing in general, but on patents that are offered for sale or offered for license, the chart has never gone down. It's been going up every year for the last 10 years. So if you look at it just from the perspective of patents that are for sale or offered for sale, whether they're sold or not, the number of litigations that are resulting from those patents has been growing quite a bit every year. Why do you think that we're having, let me start with you, Eric, why do you think we're having so much more litigation?
Well, I think there's more reasons than we have time to discuss. But one reason is because you have to. You're not allowed, unless you're an idiot, to talk to the other side before you file. Because of MedImmune and its progeny cases, the courts have seen fit to increase declaratory judgment jurisdiction to the point where if you bother to talk to the other side and mention the word patent, there's a damn good chance that you get drawn to California, their hometown, or someplace that, number one, you'll probably lose. Number two, you probably won't even get it into court before your patents are killed. So, that I think is a real problem.
Brad, are you finding that your clients, because it's becoming a little bit harder to sell the patents or license the patents, are finding needing to go to litigation more as well?
Yes, definitely. And to add to Eric, not only is the DJ a constant threat, the PTAB became an even greater threat in very short term. And there's very few options to move forward with your intellectual property. You can try to sell it, but you'll probably see from the charts that, what do you say, 10 billion gets sold, that leaves a good 80 billion. And even though stuff that's selling, the client's probably not getting what they thought that they would have in many cases.
And I should add that a lot of the people that are buying the patents are actually asserting the patents as well. We're finding that the number of patents that are sold and then litigated within 3 years after being purchased is growing exponentially each year. So
Just to jump in, I think that, for instance, your company's role, as I think you pointed out to me during the prep sessions, has a role to play here. Because, as you explained to me, and you can probably do this better, as a patent owner or an attorney representing a patent owner, we can approach you without a fear that they're going to go out and file a declaratory judgment, and we can have a real discussion. And like I said, that's basically prohibited right now, which is really unfortunate. Then you have Congress and states making these laws, like the latest one is North Carolina, the Anti-Troll Act. And it's like, I agree. If you send like 50,000 letters out, I'm not going to defend that. However, the law applies equally to, Joe down the street, telling, any size company, hey, I think I have a patent and you might, want to do, no, we're going to file in California. You're dead. That's what happens. And that's a real problem.
yeah, to add on what Eric was saying is something that the kind of a place that AST tries to fit within the ecosystem is that we try to provide a kind of a safe zone where people that want to license or perhaps before they litigate can offer their patents for sale to AST members. And we create a space where we won't file any IPRs or DJs on those patents, and in exchange, the seller's agreeing not to be putting us on, or any of our members, on notice for willful or indirect infringement. So it gives this period where the members can look at the claim charts, can examine stuff, and we end up getting a lot more information than just an individual company will normally get from a seller. And in exchange, hopefully we can put together some deals before the patents actually need to be asserted or litigated. Now you've got some experience, Stephen, with litigation. What's your view on patent litigation?
Yes, I had the opportunity to sue a little toy company back in 2003, Lego, and I got to experience that firsthand. And I realized after going through 3 years that it was a very slippery slope, that the words that we're going to be arguing could be interpreted differently by a patent examiner, by judges or juries. And I realized at that point that was always going to be tough, regardless. So my experience told me is if you can avoid it at all costs, you probably should. I also learned that it's very, very important that when you are filing, especially if you're an inventor or startup, that you really understand how to look at that technology, make sure it aligns with your business objectives, but also Make sure you include a lot of workarounds and variations, and make sure you steal it from yourself. You've heard that. And really be prepared for a fight if you think that's going to happen. Now, I'm looking at it from a business perspective, and I think it's really important for that business person to work with their patent attorney in such a way to tell them, to give them enough information for that fight. And I think that has to do with everything from how to manufacture it, the materials, all the different variations, but really prepare ahead. So if it does happen, you are at least can fight a good fight. That's what I learned by going through federal court.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent tip, is that because your patent attorney, you will normally be trained very well in the law and on drafting the patent applications, but giving them the ability to understand your business more so that they can draft a better patent is invaluable.
I think including not only, of course, prototypes, but also your business plan. You know, what is your point of difference? What's your marketing material? All those type of things can help your patent attorney look at it and really determine what's truly important. And I also believe to make sure you line up those claims, that they line up with your business objectives. And I think I like to go through each claim and say, all right, this is what I need. Show me where this matches up correctly. And I think if you look at that from a business perspective, your patent attorney is going to do a much better job.
Yeah, and that's certainly one way to make your patents more valuable for monetization. What about you, Brad? Is there what do you advise your clients on what can they do to make the monetization effort easier? Either make the patents more desirable, make them easier to monetize?
Well, really the only thing you can do is find infringement to make them valuable, and so you need to properly claim chart out your patents. And it used to be a few years ago that patents, particularly in certain areas, if 5G were coming up and you happen to have 5G patents, you might have been able to sell parts of those without claim charting, but really it all comes down to the infringement, and it comes down to the claim charts. And that's what I'll say 100% of the time. Make sure you're getting really tight, really good claim charts done.
What about you, Eric? Any other thoughts on how to make your monetization efforts easier or patents more valuable?
So, I agree with everyone, including my own earlier statement, that better patents work out better in every sense, including litigation. However, better patents cost more. We have companies that are putting pressure on patent prosecutors to put out quality patents at like $4,000 a patent. That's impossible. I mean, even if it's basically the same specification and you don't have to change much, that's like 10 hours for a very low, that's for like 10 hours at $400 an hour. If you're a partner that's making like $800 an hour, that's 5 hours. There's no way anybody, I don't care, even John White couldn't put a quality patent together. I say that because he's the guy that helped me pass the patent bar 20 years ago. But even he couldn't do that. So it costs more money. The other thing is that patent litigation is expensive as all get out. And that's not good. It's gotten to the point where, and because of the higher risk of patent litigation over the past 10 years, fewer folks are able to take cases on a pure contingency. So what happens? Well, the good thing is that we have this little thing that has really changed the game of patent litigation over the past 18 months, which is litigation funding. And that has really changed the game. I think that along with, Judge Albright, has really led to an increase in litigation. And it's not because people are, filing on crap patents. These are good patents that finally people are able to enforce. Because look at it this way, I couldn't afford myself for more than a couple months. I just couldn't. It's incredibly expensive. Then you've got to pay like experts, like $1.5 to $2.5 million. Unless you're independently wealthy, you're just not going to be able to do that. And it used to be that that's the end of the game. Don't forget that you had to get the patent. And again, if you want to do all the things that Stephen I agree 100%. If you want to do all those things and have this plan, you're gonna spend over $100,000 and probably multiples of that getting your patents. So what do? You go to a bank. You know, these are hedge funds and investment banks that are now a part of the ecosystem. You know, everybody says patent, or at least a lot of people say patent trolls are bad. Well, maybe. Depends what you'd call a patent troll. If you're talking about, you know, suing somebody to get $10,000, yeah, I agree. If, on the other hand, you're just not practicing the patents, I think there's universities, my former employer Qualcomm, and others that might disagree. The point being that to have an efficient patent market, you have to have a true ecosystem. And each of these folks have a role in that ecosystem. And again, over the last 18 months, litigation funders have become an essential part of that ecosystem to allow, you know, Joe down the street, you know, if he has, you know, a good enough patent, and that's a problem because a lot of times you only file one, to go forward.
Yeah, no, I do agree that I think litigation funding has really changed the landscape. And I think it's made it litigations, they're not just for the little guy, but they're funding, helping corporations. And I think having the litigation funders actually has improved the quality of the litigations as well. I think you're seeing less of the nuisance litigations, as you've been seeing a rise in litigation, and more of higher quality litigation, more expensive litigation, but more, you know, higher damage awards too. You look like you have a thought,
Yeah,
Stephen.
I do. I want to kind of talk a little bit about what you just said. Yes, it is expensive, okay, to do it right, and I also want to add to it, I don't think you need one patent, I think you're going to need a wall of patents. So this gets really expensive, but I also believe that you need to be able to test that market before you start spending those dollars, and I think that's the big problem here. People are filing patents that they don't know if their invention is even marketable. I think we're not talking enough about that. To test it in such a way to say, look, does this have legs? And if it does have legs, maybe I can get some funding, maybe we can license it, maybe we can get the company to pay for it. But if you do that, then you have a reason why to pursue it, and then put those dollars towards it. But you're right, it gets expensive if you do it the right way, and you're going to need more than just one patent, there's no doubt about it.
What are your thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, remember when we didn't quite finish our thought earlier when you said there's an uptick in litigation. We touched on the first part. The second part is certainly the financing. And I just wanted to reemphasize your point is that if you've gotten your portfolio up to the point where it's getting the litigation financing, there's no question that it's gone through an extra step of quality review. You aren't just sort of getting, you aren't just filing yourself, you aren't necessarily getting a bunch of attorneys together. There has been an extra step involved, an extra set of eyes on it, and you can say maybe that's good or maybe that's bad, but it's really hard to argue that there is another group of professionals that have checked the quality before moving forward.
Yeah, no, certainly. That's what I've heard a lot from litigation funders is, you know, they have quite stringent underwriters, that patent attorneys that are reviewing these things, and some companies have actually tried to utilize them to actually test their portfolios and figure out which patents within their portfolio might be worth possibly asserting or litigating. And it all goes back to what you were mentioning, Brad, about evidence of use. I think we see it in the patent transactions marketplace, whether licensing or selling patents, is that your patent will always have a better chance of being monetized if you have evidence of use behind it. And it's a good exercise to do, even as Stephen was saying, you know, to understand your invention and whether or not it has legs more, is to figure out, you know, are other people practicing this? Are other people doing this to really figure out, does it have value? So I think that's a very important aspect.
Hey, Russ, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In listening to the conversation, it seems that there's a disagreement between Brad and Stephen, and I think I would agree with both of what they're saying. But it harkens back to something I've noticed at the Patent Office for a very long time, that there seems to be a bifurcated USPTO, that if you're going to send something up in orbit or send something to Jupiter, there is one level of what's required for obviousness. If you're going to sell a little gadget on QVC, there is a different level for obviousness. And what most people would think is that the one on QVC is, although that's got to be much higher level because, you know, anybody could come up with that invention. And the one that's going to go to Jupiter, well, that's probably, you know, they have a lower idea of what's obvious because, you know, that's really an innovation. And it's exactly opposite. You can patent something very slightly unique if it's going to be sold as seen on TV. And it's got to be monumentally unique if it's a high-tech invention. And I think that that really is at the core of the difference between what Brad sees is, you know, there's not a lot of deals and the deals are getting less valuable and harder to get. And what Steven sees when dealing with the mom and pop inventors and individual inventors and small businesses and entrepreneurs who actually are getting deals, and they're getting their deals before patents are even issued. And I guess I'd just like to get the panel to talk about that kind of bizarro universe that we live in, because that's what I've been seeing for a long time, and I think that's what you're talking about. And I want to also defend John White's honor, because I think John White, we always say, he's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of patent law. When he goes to interview a case, it's like he talks to the examiner, says, these are not the droids you were looking for, and then he walks out with an allowance, and I don't know how he does it, but...
Well, John, unfortunately for you, Gene just recommended that you can do patent applications in 4 hours for $4,000, and that everybody should come to you for that. All right. No, you're absolutely right, Gene. It is a bizarre world, and there's so many nuances to the patent monetization world, not just the aspect that you talked about where people sometimes have the perception that something had a more stringent review than it did, or that it's something much more novel than it is. But there's also, in the monetization landscape, there's two different buckets actually as well. There's the bucket of patents that are being monetized that are about 10 years old or older, that are kind of already have an industry built around them. And that's where a lot of companies want to get together and try to take those off the market usually, if they're of good quality. Then there's also the patents that are really a novel patent, like you were talking about, something that's really unique. Nobody's even doing this yet, and companies will compete to buy those patents to have it all to themselves because it's the future. It's what they want to do in years to come. So there's that other subtle aspect to it too. But let me toss to the panel. What do you guys think about Gene's comment and the bizarre world that we live in?
Well, just to take a first stab, if it goes back to my point is if you have a purpose in mind for your patent, I think you should get it. And sometimes that purpose might just be to put patent pending on something so that you can get marketing dollars or get partnerships or something like that. But if you don't have that sort of specific goal in mind, I don't see the use, and that might be where the disconnect was arising from.
Stephen?
Ted has a question.
Oh, do we have a question?
Yeah, I would, because you keep saying something over and over that I don't understand. You talk about quality patents and better quality patents, in particular better quality patents. I've never heard that defined. You say it as though we ought to be able to recognize them by looking at them, because if you say we should have better quality, that means you know what a better quality patent is. And I simply, first of all, don't. And the second thing I want to add to this before I let you go is that I have read some very interesting articles over the years. They said that a patent that is obscure and nobody knows what the hell it is can, for litigation negotiation, be much better than the clear one. Because you know if you are infringing the clear one. If it's kind of obscure in that, you're facing litigation rolling dice because you don't know what's going to happen. So a better quality patent is one that is less clear, it's less well written. I hope you can clear this up to me, because you've used the word quality patents about 4 times, and I do not know what you need, nor have you explained it.
So the idea that I'm going to clear anything up is probably there's probably not a great chance of that. Yeah, I'm a litigator. Come on. The reality is that, what is a quality patent? Some of it's going to be objective. Like, how about this? Don't have a claim that's 3 pages long. The chance of that being infringed is low. Don't have a claim that's like 1 sentence long. The chance of that being valid is, well, okay, 2 lines long. Sorry, John, I failed you. But, there are, and there's areas of crowded art where you're going to have to be more specific. It's, some of this is going to be like, what do they say, the Supreme Court said about pornography. I know it when I see it. The fact is that if a patent is hazy, I disagree that that's now a quality patent. Circa 2005, that would have been the patent to litigate. Take it to Marshall, and I mean, I swear I got paid quite a bit just to take some patent that really said one thing. The inventor said, oh, well, this, I think company A may infringe this. And I was like, well, that reads sort of crap. However, the good news is that you could read it on these because you don't say that they don't infringe. And that ought not be the standard. And I think that a good quality patent is one that, that says what it means, that's pretty clear, that doesn't use obscure terms. Look at it from, again, hammer, nail. I look at it from the eyes of a jury. Am I going to be able to explain pretty clearly what this says? If not, then that's, it may still be a quality patent, whatever the hell that means, but it's not going to be ideal. If it's something that you can clearly, and again, it's time for you to understand the technology and teach that to the jury, but if you can do that, then that's a big deal.
I love your question, though, because you're right. People don't have a common agreement on what a quality patent is. I actually thought that when the Supreme Court came out with the Nautilus case, that it was going to be a sea change in the patent prosecution world. I thought everybody was going to be drafting patents with more specificity, more clarity, less vagueness, and that what we'd get as a result of that is it's easier to know whether or not you're actually infringing it. It's easier to determine whether or not it's invalid. And when you know those two things, it's easier to transact the patent. It's easier to avoid litigation. It would make the world a much better place. That's my idea of a quality patent. I know Eric said some things that would make a patent better for litigation, but I'm thinking a higher quality patent actually helps you avoid litigation because there's not going to be an argument about whether or not it's valid or infringed because it's drafted with enough clarity and specificity. That's my idea of a quality patent, but I know not everybody shares that.
Well, let's look at it from a business perspective, not so much from a legal one. What I think a quality patent is that when I show it to a company to license, they see the value. They see it enough to invest in it. They see enough to believe in it. There's enough information for them to look at and go, look, we can be competitive with this. Now, will we potentially litigate? Maybe yes, maybe no. I think that's going to be helpful too. But I want a quality patent that really provides the company with the roadmap of how to do something very efficient, right? And have enough information in that patent so I know exactly how to implement it and what to do with it. When I read these patents today and I don't understand what I'm reading, I'm confused. I want something that's very easy to read, I get it, and I want something for a company to see it and go, we like it, we understand it, where it's going, and you can build upon it. That's what I think a quality patent is to me.
I'll add one more thing. It's important to understand that the claim has to be infringed generally by one company or one entity. And I see a lot of software patents, and well over half, and maybe 90%, are not good patents for the simple reason that you need a cell phone company, you need a hardware company, you need a carrier. And the idea that those folks join together and, hey, let's screw this inventor, as much as I'd love to think that, and maybe they do, but you can't prove that in court, so sorry.
Yes, another question?
Can we do questions here so we can catch it on the camera, please?
Okay, they're asking you to use the microphone for questions.
Here's microphone's back here.
Okay, well,
Well, we can bring it over here.
it's gonna be hard.
Podcasts and sound bites, and we gotta.
We're still learning to get back in the business.
Okay. So I agree that we need to write great patents. And I feel like, oh my gosh, you've come up with something that's never been known on this earth before. rather than think, how cheaply can I get protection? You think, I want to get the best protection I can get. But the problem that nobody is addressing here, which leads me to wonder why anyone would ever buy a patent, is that you get your patent, you have to prove all the elements of infringement for it to even be enforceable. So you've got this wonderful, efficient business model, you've disclosed all these great things in your patent, you've given it all to the public. I am that company that wants your invention. I am that company that is going to efficiently infringe it, because there is no reason for me to buy it from you when I can infringe it, or at least pay $1 million at a high rate to the PTAB to invalidate it, or try to invalidate it, or put you out of business. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I love that statement, and I look at it very differently. I think it's almost impossible to stop competition from coming in. I think it's kind of like whack-a-mole now. So I think if you're looking at your patent to keep people at bay, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. I think the fight is not in court today. I think the fight is in the fight of public opinion. And I think we're not looking at it, especially as inventors or startups, that we need to build a raging fan base. We need to be first. We need to have great customer service. We need to treat our customers so they love us. We need to do everything that has to do with good business practice. And just realize that you're not going to be able to eat the whole cherry pie, that there's going to be people picking at it. All right, so that's what happens. So does that stop you from filing? No. Does that stop you from going forward? No. I think in my world of using intellectual property from a business perspective, you just prepare for it, you get ready for it. But I just look at it from a very practical, how do I win today? That's why when I hear everybody complaining about the patent system, to me, it's fantastic, always has been. Maybe it's not great, never will be, but how do we work around it? Not be victims of it and not point fingers, but how do we use what we know today as be smart entrepreneurs? That's what I'm very passionate about, and I think smart inventors today are using different tools. And we saw one recently where someone was copied from Amazon, and they didn't poke them in the eye, they didn't sue them, but they played a very funny, humorous video on the internet, and they made more sales, and Amazon took it off, and they fought in the fight of public opinion, and they won without spending very little money. So I think the fight has changed, and I think the whole environment of IP is changing, and we have to change with it. So I'm a big believer in
That's a bit of a sad comment on the quality of, not the quality of patents, but the quality of the patent litigation system and the enforcement and everything, where if your patent isn't doing what it should, you have to play a different game. I would prefer having the patents do a little bit better in the legal system than what they're doing now.
No, I agree, and don't get me wrong, I do believe that the system has never been great. I've been through it back in 2003. I realized at that point I was really going to be outgunned. But I do also believe that just because maybe I don't have the finances or the legal team, I can still fight back. I can still play the game. But I believe patents are used not just from a litigation standpoint, but raising money. I think they're important. I'm a big believer, even though I said that, I'm a big believer in the patent system. I file all the time. I support it. But I don't believe that I'm going to fight in litigation is the best use of my time and money. I think there's other values IP has today.
I think that's a great realistic look at it. You know, you get your patent, you're going to get benefit out of it, even though you don't get to eat the whole pie, as you put it. And what's great, it's great and dangerous about the system is that there's people that when you're on to your next idea, you've already had enough pie that you've had your fill and you're on your next idea. There's other people that will come on and scavengers that will, get the rest of the pie for you. They'll take that patent off your hands and they'll go and try to get a bunch of those efficient infringers and try to clean up some of the scraps. It keeps people honest to a certain extent, but it's not, as you guys all point out, we all know it's not a perfect system.
The thing I want to point out is that maybe it wasn't designed this way, but the reality is patents are for the little guy. Apple doesn't need them. Google doesn't need them. They have more money than God and market leverage. That's why they see patents as threats. And the idea that because Amazon can use its market leverage and its, its $1 trillion, marketing budget and, social media is way out of something, that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't mean that Joe down the street can do that. All Joe has is a patent and a dream that the U.S. Legal system is what it purports to be.
Now, can I just say one thing? I think that's very true, but I do think as individual inventors, we have more power today than we ever have had. Because today, all these companies are on social media, and they've spent all this money on their brand. Now, we can poke them all we want. We can write bad reviews. We could tarnish their image instantly now. So I think the power has shifted. So I don't think we're at a disadvantage as a small inventor. I think you're going to see a change. And that's why I'm a big believer in inventors need to unite. And I know we're not united, and it's a mess out there. But I do believe the power of social media is going to flip, and it's going to help us.
It certainly has. I mean, for instance, when I lived, it was in India or China, I forget, Lufthansa forgot that we had a ticket, and I had to repurchase a ticket, for much higher price. And rather than litigate, which I certainly could have done, I don't even know who I would have sued, but rather than do that, I got on social media, and within 6 hours, amazingly, they relented. So I agree, it is there, but when push comes to shove, and you have a group of large companies that they do a lot of good things, but they also have an interest in not spending money. They'd rather spend the money on their lawyers than they would paying inventors. I mean, it's if you look back to any movie involving big bad pharmaceutical company, and we'd rather spend Aaron Brockovich, the company would rather spend money paying folks off than they would taking the hexavalent chromium or whatever the heck was involved. Here, when you have the fact that we have a term in efficient infringement, that itself is a problem. And I agree, it takes a village. This is a complex ecosystem, and I don't think either one of us is wrong, especially me. But I think that at different stages, and depending on your specific goals as an individual and as a business, this works. But if there's somebody with ill will, again, if you need a patent that's just gonna, go up on a wall and say, and you're gonna advertise at 2 a.m. and it's like, we've got a patent, so it must work. That's great. But for me, a patent's only as good as you can enforce it. And it's gotten much more difficult to enforce, much more expensive, and the only things that we have on our side are judges like Judge Albright and Judge Gilstrap that generally will not stay a case pending IPR, and litigation funders that somewhat equalize the money gap.
Well, maybe Stephen's right. Maybe to offset efficient infringers, we'll have a more efficient social media system. Maybe litigation funders will start financing social media campaigns to try to bully companies into taking licenses or such. You got a question back there?
You bet, thanks. So my question is history repeating itself? And let me give the context of the question. So, right, America was created because people in England couldn't own property or freedom of religion, thus they left, right? Every single one of you have stated that it's very expensive to enforce. Have we created a game of kings? Thus, do we need a revolution, right? so that the average Joe can own and enforce. Yeah, the average Joe can own, but can we effectively enforce? So is history repeating itself? Do we need a revolution, or are we okay?
I'll jump in because I've been gloom and doom, and you might expect me to say, yeah, we're all screwed. But the reality is, yeah, is it a challenge? Yes, but I help people every day, individuals, small businesses, and I generally can't take on a full contingency because, I work at a larger firm. However, I and my partners have relationships with, 10 or more litigation funders that basically allow us to take cases on a contingency. Again, I think the bar of your case being good, and good is the wrong term. I would say able to be litigated. We could go into that, but if it is litigation quality patents, you can do it. You just need to talk to the right people, and luckily, you've got one right here. And there's good people out there. I mean, look who's filing the cases, in front of Judge Albright. Just, give them a call, and you can get good results. But yeah, it is harder. It is a challenge, and I get that folks like U.S. Inventor are protesting and burning patents on the steps of the PTO. I agree with that, but I stay in my lane. Me getting on the steps and burning a patent ain't going to help anyone. What I can do is help you get the financing and win in court. And again, it's a part of an ecosystem, but I agree.
I think most people would like to see cheaper litigation. I mean, litigation reform, I don't know if it's repetition, because litigation reform, we've all been waiting for it to happen for decades and more. But yeah, I think everybody would like, I like to hear when people like Judge Albright talk about it, doing more things by Zoom, and continuing that going forward, I think will reduce the cost of litigation to some extent. So hopefully we can hope for more there. We have another question back here.
Isn't the real problem that there is a vast gulf between the belief of plaintiffs in the value and validity of their patent and what it covers, and what defendants believe that the patents cover and whether they're valid or not? I have never seen a knowing efficient infringer. I have seen people with differences of opinion as to the scope and validity of a patent. There was the comment made that if the patent was clear and you knew whether you were infringing or not, my clients will pay up every time if it's clear, but it's usually not.
It's never clear. You're absolutely right. When I was in charge of patent litigation at Avaya, I had there's about 30 cases that I analyzed where we never did what was being taught in the specification of the patent was not the way we were doing it. But they were trying to read the claims on what we're doing, which leads to the natural situation that you just explained, which is that we don't think we're infringing. You're trying to read your claims in a way to find infringement that we don't believe is a proper reading of it. So now we have to spend millions of dollars to go figure that out. You're absolutely right.
I agree 100%. This is very complex, but it's not, at least conceptually, all that different than a simple contract case where those of us that went to law school should know what a contract means, but apparently we don't, because it goes to trial, and that's a simple case. And here's a patent, which is arguably multitudes more complex than a simple contract.
I'm going to jump in briefly and say I actually don't entirely agree with that, because maybe not a efficient infringer, but there's a willful blindness in almost every company out there. Why would you, when you're putting a product to market, scour the patent system and look for who you think you're infringing and try to cut licenses ahead of time? It doesn't happen. It makes much more sense just to be like, we'll just put our product to market. If it doesn't make money, nobody cares. If it makes money, maybe someone's going to come after us. Maybe we'll pay them, maybe we won't. Nobody checks the market much.
Yeah, I'll also point out there's one other chasm that goes together with the one about whether you think you infringe or don't infringe, and that's the valuation. Sometimes there's companies that will say, you know what, there's a good chance that I might be infringing that, and I'd pay them some amount of money, but when they come and they tell me that they want $1 billion or something more than that, you're like, take me to court. Of course, I'm not going to just write you out a check for $1 billion. For that amount of money, you're going to have to, I'm going to make you have to prove it. With every ounce of energy I have, I'm going to make you have to prove that. But at a lower amount of money, they'll be like, you know what, there's a reasonable chance that I could be infringing this. I'll pay you that amount of money. So there's two different, there's the infringement validity chasm, and then there's also the valuation of it aspect. Because we see patents, when we see patent sellers come in with more reasonable valuation, those deals get done a lot more often than when they have astronomical. We've seen some inventors come to say, hey, my patent covers this capacitor, something that's a unique little thing. He's like, and I think this is, a $10 trillion market, and I think a reasonable price for my patent, which should be $5 billion for a single patent. Like, it's just not going to happen. Whether or not he's right or not, it's just not going to happen.
Okay, let me give you some perspective from an inventor standpoint. I'm a founder and CEO of a company. I've got technology patents. Surprisingly, my patent attorney actually showed up, so I got to be careful what I say. Some things that happen from an inventor's standpoint that you guys that are litigation attorneys should understand is when you're an inventor, the thing that you do want to do is make money off of your invention. You do want to control a certain part of the marketplace, and you do want to be able to license the product out. So when you've got something that's really special, like I believe we do, companies then come to you, they hawk you, they watch what you do, and they steal it. I've had some big corporations come in, look at my product, and 18 months later, guess what? They're doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. Guess what I have to do as a small inventor? I have to come to you guys and say, I've got some people infringing on my product. What do we do? You guys turn around and say, give me $2.5 million and I'll support you. As a small inventor, small business guy, can't do that. That puts a small inventor, a patent holder, and that's why the U.S. Inventors is doing what they're doing, and I am a part of the U.S. Inventors, and I'm here to go to a rally that they're having here in Dallas Thursday and all around the country to protect this PTAB stuff. So what I'm saying is you've got an opportunity, a huge opportunity out there for a lot of small inventors to help them. We need direction. We need someone to step up to the plate. I don't know where and I don't know how, but we need somebody to help us protect our inventions, not only from PTAB and the such, but from big corporations. Big corporations don't give a rip. They'll come take your product and they'll put it out in the marketplace and say, sue me. I don't care, and you got to go and sue them. I'm actually doing my first litigation case, filing next week against some big corporations. I have 300 infringers at this particular point that are infringing on our product we know of. We're going after one. We're going to start with one. And so I'm saying that to tell you guys and ask you guys, come up with a plan to help the small inventor. Then you guys will have a huge market. The market, I wished I would have become a lawyer. If knowing what I know now, I wished I would have become a patent attorney, because there are so many people out there needing help right now that have some really even better patents than I do. I went in front of the USPTO and spoke. They asked me to come in front of them 3 months ago to talk about our patents because they were really good. And we actually did some training with the patent office. So we have really good patents in our mindset. But there's a lot of small business people that need help from you guys, and I don't know how you can come together. IPWatchdog is a great forum. This is absolutely tremendous. I think the next thing you should do is put an inventor group with the IPWatchdog, and you guys, everybody kind of mix and match.
It is a big ecosystem, and
It's huge.
I applaud what you're saying, because I think small inventors can use a lot of help and direction from a number of different places.
Yeah.
I try to fit one of those little spots by we buy more patents from independent inventors than probably anybody else in the world.
Yeah.
So but that's only one little piece. There's so much more that could be done.
Yeah, one other thing about the patent litigation group, a patent litigation group, yeah, they'll take the patents and fund them. But there's a lot of times we went through a lot of different funding groups, and they'll vent them and they'll want to do it, but they want to take everything that comes your way, their way, forever. I cut that out. I mean, I'm not going to give a patent litigation firm everything I get because of their filings. So the thing about we just need some help.
Yep. No, thanks for the comments. I think we're out of time now, Gene, and so Gene's giving us the hook, but thank you all for listening to this panel. I think we put together a pretty good panel here, and thank you for the time. Talk to you all at the reception.